Welcome to the Movie Zone. Today we are recapping the 2017 American horror film Get Out. This movie is 100% going to give you the creeps. As usual, spoilers ahead, so be ready. Let's begin. A young black man, Andre, is walking alone at night through a quiet suburban street. He is talking on his phone, talking with his girlfriend, describing how the street is giving him the creeps. Suddenly, a little sports car pulls up and starts slowly tracking him and changes directions, rushing to head back to where he came from. Just then, from out of nowhere, a man wearing a weird-looking helmet races behind him and attacks him, rendering him unconscious. The man then drags Andre's body to the car. Rose arrives at her photographer boyfriend Chris's apartment. The couple is planning for the first huge step in their relationship. Rose is taking Chris to meet her parents. However, the fact that she hasn't told her parents that Chris is black concerns the man a lot. Rose assures him that while they will likely say some stupid things, they are incredibly progressive. Her dad would have even voted for Obama a third time if he could have. She states this line with much emphasis as she knows her father will probably bring it up. On the ride to her parents' home, Chris calls his buddy Rod, a TSA agent at the local airport, to make sure that he knows the proper way to take care of Chris's dog. Rod is very disappointed at Chris dating a white woman and berates him all the while during the call. The man thinks that Chris is making a bad mistake by heading to Rose's place. While they're talking and not paying attention to the road, a deer jumps out from the surrounding forest and darts in front of the car. The couple ends up hitting the deer, rendering it dead. They immediately pull over and call the police, just as Chris expected. The police is racist, as almost every other policeman in America, and ask for Chris's identification even though Rose was driving the car. However, Rose steps in to protect her boyfriend and puts the cop in his place. Chris and Rose arrive at her parents' home. Her father, Dean Armitage, is a neurosurgeon who, as Rose had predicted before, almost immediately tells Chris that he would have voted for Obama a third time if he could have. Her mother, Missy, is a hypnotherapist who seems a bit too cold for Chris's taste. All in all, though, Chris believes the family is a normal white family who wants the whole world to know, desperately, that they aren't racist. As they all sit together, Dean brags about his wife, how she had developed a new hypnotic method that could help him with anything. Missy even offers to cure Chris of his nicotine addiction through hypnosis, but he doesn't feel cool with people tooling around in his head. Oddly so, the Armitages have two black helpers, Walter the groundskeeper and Georgina the maid. For people who don't want to seem racist, this did look a bit too shady. But Dean assures Chris they were hired to take care of his parents, and when they passed, Dean felt bad letting them go, considering that they had been in their family for so long. Dean gives Chris a tour of the house and shows him old family photos. There are also photos of Rose's brother, Jeremy, who will be joining them later. The family gets together for afternoon tea, during which Missy casually steers her tea, lightly tapping her spoon against the teacup exactly 3 times. The group starts chatting and the conversation quickly turns sour when they talk about Chris's family. His mother was the only one he had, and she too had passed away in a car accident when he was 11. Just then, Georgina, who was pouring them tea, acts weirdly, and Missy tells her to go lie down and get some rest. The Armitages tell Rose that they are having their big family gathering the next day. She's surprised at this, but they remind her that it's the same day every year. Rose's brother Jeremy arrives. As expected, Jeremy is an aggressive, spoiled rich kid. That night, after making love to his girlfriend, Chris is unable to fall asleep. He gets up and decides to sneak out for a cigarette. As he silently walks through the quiet garden, he sees Walter in the distance charging at him like a huge train. It's Walter! The man makes a sharp turn at the last moment and barely avoids hitting Chris. As Chris quietly sneaks back into the house, Missy startles him by turning on a light. She remarks smoking is a bad habit and offers again to help him with her method. Reluctantly, Chris sits down before her, unaware that she is slowly hypnotizing him, using her teaspoon as a focus object. She takes him back to the night his mom died when he was 11. Chris always had a deep regret when it comes to his mother's death, as he was too scared to do anything that day. Missy uses this detail and sends him deeper and deeper into his mind. Like before, she taps her teacup with her spoon 3 times and tells him to sink. Chris sinks into the blackness within his mind, seeing himself and Missy far above. His consciousness has left his body, which lies paralyzed in the chair. The next thing Chris remembers is waking in the morning. Chris realizes that his phone's battery is low, so he plugs it in as he heads outside to the gathering. the Armitage's wealthy friends arrive for the big party. It's mostly older white people who say many inappropriate things to Chris. After finding himself a constant source of inappropriate talk, Chris sneaks off and finds a blind man named Jim Hudson. Hudson is a well-known art dealer, and Chris is well aware of who he is. The two end up discussing their work, and Hudson relates of how he is envious of Chris's eyes. When Chris goes back to mingling with the guest, he discovers another black guy. Relieved, Chris tries to bond with him, but he is too stiff and unnatural. Just like Walter and Georgina, but something about him seems familiar to Chris. Chris returns back to his room and finds his phone unplugged. Realizing that everything around him was getting more and more creepier, he calls Rod again and tells him everything that's been going on. Rod warns him that white people love to have sex slaves and he needs to get out of there. Rod tells Chris to take a picture of the black guy and he will see if he remembers him. As Chris is about to leave, Georgina appears in the doorway and starts apologizing for unplugging his cellular phone. Chris doesn't pay much attention and tells her that it's fine and assures her he didn't intend to rat her out. For some reason, she starts getting super weird and lets out a single tear while telling him that the Armitages treat her like family. Chris goes back outside and tries to cheekily take the black man's picture with his cell phone as he talks about his life. Just as Chris clicks the picture, his flash suddenly goes off. As soon as his phone flashes, the man changes straight at Chris, yelling at him to get out while he still could. Rose is freaked out now too. She asks her dad what happened and he explains that the flash just caused the man to have a seizure. The man comes out and apologizes for upsetting everyone. This is all too weird for Chris, and so he and Rose go for a walk. He tells her that he's sure he recognized the guy and that something strange is definitely going on. Chris is not feeling well and safe, and decides he'd really like to go home now. Rose reluctantly agrees. She agrees to make up an excuse with her parents for leaving so early. Back at the house, Dean is holding a silent auction with his guest, who hold up bingo cards to bid. The bid was for none other than Chris himself. This family was messed up. The auction is won by Jim Hudson. As Chris goes on packing his belongings, he gets a call from Rod that the guy in the picture is a guy they knew named Dre, who went missing some weeks ago. Before the two friends talk further, however, Chris's phone battery dies. Chris then stumbles upon an open closet door and finds a box filled with photos of Rose. These pictures look like from her past relationships with other black guys. As he scours through these pictures, Chris notices that she has pictures with both Walter and Georgina, who don't at all resemble the weird versions they were now. Even though Rose had assured him that he was the only black guy she had dated, it didn't look like it at all. Chris and Rose then prepare to leave, but for some reason, Rose just can't find the car keys. How convenient. As they reach the door, suddenly, Jeremy appears, blocking the front door. He is ready to attack Chris, but his parents, who have also arrived there, tell him to calm down. Even after a long time, Rose can't find the keys, agitating Chris, until she finally reveals that she is in on whatever this is. Missy clinks the teaspoon on her glass, and Chris slumps back into the dark void again. Meanwhile, Rod keeps trying to call Chris, but it keeps going straight to voicemail. Upon further investigation, Rod realizes that Andre had been missing for well over 6 months now, so he goes to the police. He tells the female officer there his complex story about how the white folks were brainwashing black people to make them sex slaves, but they all burst out laughing. Nobody will take him seriously. Honestly, in this day and age, who would? Rod decides to help his homeboy himself. Chris wakes up to find himself strapped to a chair somewhere inside the Armitage residence. Before him is an old TV set that plays a video made by Dean's father that talks about some immortality project that their family had discovered somehow. Before Chris could do anything though, the cup appears again and he is out cold. Chris wakes up again, and this time, Jim Hudson is on the TV screen. He tells Chris that he had bought him in the auction, and by the procedure created by the Armitage, they were going to switch places. Hudson does, however, assure him that he wasn't racist. He didn't care about his color at all. He just wanted to have his eyes to see. Dean and Jeremy prep Jim Hudson for a brain transplant. Jeremy goes to get Chris and finds him, as expected, unconscious on his chair. However, Chris wasn't unconscious. He'd stuffed padding from the chair in his ears to block the sound of the teaspoon the last time when Jim had showed up on the TV. As soon as Jeremy releases his binds, Chris knocks him out cold. Chris then rushes to Dean and impales him with the deer antlers from the other room. The man is instantly killed. Chris knocks over a candle that ignites the blanket covering Jim Hudson as well. Chris then goes upstairs and finds Missy. He expertly prevents her from getting the cup and uses the knife she was holding to stab her to death. Jeremy comes from behind as well and puts him in a chokehold, but Chris stabs him in the leg and breaks his skull with brutal head stomps. He runs outside and gets into Jeremy's car. On the passenger seat is the weird-looking helmet from earlier. He starts down the driveway, but hits Georgina. As he helps her into the car, he notices she has a scar across her head from a brain transplant too. Suddenly, the rear view mirror is blown away. Rose is coming after Chris with a shotgun. From out of nowhere, Walter runs past Rose in pursuit of Chris, with Rose referring to him as Grandpa. The large man immediately starts overpowering Chris and choking him, but Chris takes his picture with his phone, causing a flash. All of a sudden, Walter turns and asks Rose for her gun. She gives it to him, and he shoots her in the stomach. The man then shoots himself through the head. Chris sobs as he walks toward his girlfriend. He chokes her, forcing himself to kill her, but cannot do so. Suddenly, a police car pulls up. Rose calls weakly for help, knowing the local racist police will throw Chris in jail. But sadly for her, it's Rod. He had come in looking for his friend. Chris gets into the car. The two friends then drive away, leaving Rose to die from her injuries. What do you think about this gripping movie? Tell us in the comments below. Be sure to like and subscribe. See you next time.